Okay, so this is a video to support what we did earlier on. So you're going to start a new project, obviously just do an empty project and just give it a title obviously that you're working on. So obviously personal, give it a personal title. If it's for FMP, you can title it FMP if you want to as well. So you can create that. So obviously this is the Protools layout, and we want to add some tracks first. So yeah, I've got the track menu at the top there to go new, and obviously this is on a Mac, so it's got the command option, so it would be Shift Control and then on a Windows. But if we do the shortcut as well, it could be useful for your blog to identify things. If we create 3 instrument tracks, so you see we've put 3 in the first box there, go across here and add instrument track in. Obviously I'm not going to name them because it'll name them all the same thing for now. If we've got to create, we can just go through and double click on the instrument name and call it drums, bass and piano. Obviously this was just to demonstrate the pop idea that we did this morning. If you wanted to change the genre and do whatever, you obviously might pick different instrumentation for it suitable for what you're doing. So just to zoom in a bit on the bar markings here, the shortcut you'll be using is Control and the bracket option, so you might be able to see it in the left hand side of the screen there. Me zooming in and zooming out, obviously I've got the command option and that's what that symbol is showing you, but you would just use Control and the brackets, okay? So to load the instruments up, then you have to obviously click on the insert box, insert A, and change it to an instrument. And if you use the expand to, obviously if you're using the DAW, you would use something different. Obviously Hallian Sonic is in Cubase. I'm not sure about other things. Default programs like BandLabs and whatever else, Cakewalks, etc. That they'll just obviously have inbuilt generic sounds, so you just search for piano obviously. But on this it's got a range of different presets, so if you use the factory default box at the top here, and this is the first channel, so it's going to be drums. So if I look for the drums down to 26 there, and then if I go for the pop kit just to get it started off, and then we go to the insert tab for the bass, plug in again, instrument, expand to, and factory default, up to bass guitars, wherever that is, 25 there, and then full fingered bass will do. Obviously you can experiment with sounds as and when you want to. And then finally for the piano, so click on there, plug in again, instrument and expand to. Again the factory default preset there, should have acoustic piano somewhere there, number 13 across, and again select what you want, but I'm going to go for the natural grand piano. So we decided as a team last week to start writing in a chord progression in the key of D major, and I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head now, but I'll just generate one from the D major scale, and obviously we can look at putting that in. So if we go to the draw tool and go to select some notes in the MIDI region of the piano, we can just click on a note there, and hopefully that should allow us to bring us up to the mediator, clicking into this region, or don't know, can we open MIDI in MIDI editor there? Look, so there's an option there, that'd be better. So right click on the section of the MIDI notes that you've been drawing in there, and down to open in MIDI editor there. Then it just opens up in this bigger screen, and you can obviously lift that screen up a little bit more just so you can see the notes clearer. And obviously if you select the tools, any of the notes that I was just clicking on originally, just to delete them, so you can select them and backspace. And to zoom it in a little bit more, I just want to concentrate on the first 4 bars. I'll expand it a little bit more just so I can see each of the notes a bit clearer. Now there is a lot of notes in this bar of music right now, or spaces for me to be able to put notes in, because of the grid setting currently on 16th notes probably. So if I click on the drop down menu there, and I'm just going to do a simple pop song, so I'm going to start off with 8 notes, you notice that some of the little faint lines that were in there have now disappeared. So we're still going to use a simple chord progression to get us started off with, and the notes that I'm going to do is E. So if I get the draw tool back on, I'm going to put an E minor chord in first. So if I go for E and for G and B. And again, if you don't know the notes on the piano, there was a link to it on the Word document that we've worked on. And if you can't see the notes clear enough, if you struggle to see that, I think if we press Command Shift and the bracket sign, you'll notice that it zooms it in vertically as well. So that's the shortcut for horizontal. It's just Command and the bracket, and for vertical, Command Shift and the bracket. So just so you can see the notes clear on the piano if you absolutely need to. So I'll just jump out one more zoom. So there we go. So you can click on notes there, just check the C, E, and G and B, E, G, and B. Sorry. Then let's go to A major next. So let's stick in an A major. I'm just going to do this one chord per bar. And if you know anything about inversions and piano playing, you might look to consider putting the notes in a different order. But if you're not sure what I've just done now, I've selected an A, then a C sharp. Logically, you'd put an E on top, but I'm just thinking about a piano player playing naturally. They might invert it so that the E is actually the lowest note, so that we don't have to move our hand position too much. Then we could go to F sharp minor, so we'll put the F sharp in for the B, for the bar, sorry, and then A, and then C sharp, and then finally let's maybe go to B minor. So I'm going to put in a B, and an F sharp, and a D on top. So again, we looked at them chords and them notes, and they're just randomly selected. No background knowledge, prior background knowledge. Just to listen to see if they sound okay. Okay, so that just works. And it's not anything technical. Literally just selecting notes or chords from the scale, one after another. So knowing that we've got the chord progression being E to A to F sharp to B, what we're going to do next is look at putting in a bass line to support it. So just another thing to do maybe before we finish on the piano section is to change it from note view into clips view, so then you can see it more like a MIDI region. So if I go into clips view and take the grabber tool, I've then got the opportunity to copy that by pressing Command and D on a Mac or Control and D on a Windows machine. And we've suggested doing this afternoon to make the programming side of things a little bit quicker. So if I did copy it and I drag it back to here, what I can then do is potentially take out the top two notes of each of the chords. So I'm going to be left with the lowest note. Then you've got another question now to mark is I was doing some intervals, inversions on the previous thing. So in theory, the bass part no longer is the lowest note, but I could quickly fix them if I wanted to. Now, out of curiosity, I'm going to see if I can just keep them as they are for now, out of interest. And I'm going to lower them down into a lower pitch. So I'm going to start down on C, E2, sorry. So out of curiosity, let's listen to see what it sounds like. Okay, yeah, so it works, but it's not ideal. So what I'm going to do is follow the chord progression. So it's only a minimal change now compared to what I would have had to do drawing it all in again. 6 and 2 3s, depending on how you program and how quick you are with it. But there's nothing wrong with the process that we've just looked at. I'm just checking all the notes. Right, okay, so now we're just supporting the root note of the chord. It's E to A to F sharp to B. Okay, so that works. Right, and then we have got it in clips view already because it was being copied across, but if you have drawn the notes in, it'll be in notes view still, so you can go back to clips so you can see it that way. Now, currently it is labelled Piano 03, and I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, how to rename clips on this just yet, but I believe there's somewhere where you can rename the clip as well if you want to keep it right, and it stumped me for this point in time, but we'll have a look at that as soon as I can find it. I don't know if you can edit the event operations rename. There we go, and just call it paste. So yeah, there will be a keyboard shortcut for it, no doubt. Some of you guys might know it already, but if we rename them just piano and bass, and you could even call it intro if you really want to, but we're going to use a colour system shortly anyway. Right, to that point there, then we've got ourselves a piano and a bass part in. Now we're going to draw some drums in. So if we create the MIDI editor like this, right click in this region and open in MIDI editor, you'll see now that we've got a note that I've just drawn in on the top part, and it sounds like a drum, so that's good news, and we'll move it down. So the default drums if it's clear to hear or not, is C1 is the kick drum, D1 is the snare, and F#1 is the hi-hat, and you'll also find C#2 is also the crash cymbal. Now we're going to try and keep it simple to start off with. It's a pop song. Earlier on we did a little bit of a busier drum pattern to start off. I'm going to keep it slow for this reason. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see the separation in the notes, and I might even zoom it up so I can just see the notes a little bit easier on the piano scroll as well. And obviously you can rearrange the screen a little bit if you need to make that a bit bigger for yourself as well. So back to the draw tool. I'm going to keep it on 8th notes, if it already is. Yeah, it's already on set to 8th notes there from the grid value. And the very basic, it should have been, yeah it is, yeah. The very basic pattern that we're going to start off with, if we draw this note in, if it lets me, why is it not letting me? It's letting me do that for some reason. Let's see one. There's my kick drum pattern. Right, why are we not drawing? There we go. Okay, so tool looked like it was highlighted, but maybe it wasn't. So I'm just going to keep it as a crotchet hi-hat pattern and a kick drum on beat 1. Now, noting that that's the first bar, if I wanted to repeat that a numerous amount of times, obviously we can select it as Control A, or I can highlight them all. And then if I use Control D, like we've seen before, that duplicates. And obviously, if you're on a Mac, it's Command D. So to get us started off, we've got a simple drum pattern. If we look at the method of changing the note section to clips, you can then see it like a MIDI region like the other parts, and hopefully it'll sound okay. So I'm just going to double check. So it sounds like a build up. Okay, great. So knowing that it all works, we can then look to duplicate it. So we've actually got that entire section copied, so it's 8 bars. Again, it's up to you, your arrangement, your structure later on, but you might want an 8-bar intro. So if we highlight them all, so I'm literally clicking on one MIDI clip at the top left hand corner there, then shift and then clicking on the last one, and then shift clicking on the last one on the bass part. We can then double click on the colour region over here. We can change it to clips in tracks, and we can make them a certain colour if you want to. That then means that you've got your intro coloured one colour there. So now if we go to the next section, and we're going to start to build it up into more of a verse section here now. What we could do is we could get the draw tool out, and we could select the MIDI region for piano. So we're going to build the chord progression up, opening the MIDI editor below, and just give ourselves a little bit more space and see it a bit more clearly. Right, so we started the chord progression off originally as E minor, A major, F sharp minor, B minor. Now you could keep that exact same chord progression, and out of curiosity I'm going to do that now, but I'm going to change the rhythm pattern. So you could change it, give yourself 4 new chords from the D major scale, absolutely. You can keep it the same, it's your composition, you can do what you want. So to be able to make this a little bit clearer, I'm going to zoom in again as well. So I just want to look at 1 bar of music. So you can see if I draw this one note right now out, draw tool, doing that again. Put the pencil back. Right, okay, so what's going on here? For no reason didn't like that, but we'll try again. Maybe I'll put that random note. There we go. So if I go to E minor again, and I draw that note value out for the full extension of that bar, so this is all the way through bar 9. It's very similar to the chord progression or the note value that we used for the intro, so obviously we're going to try and make it a little bit more exciting. Now I'm going to use what we call a dotted crotchet note, which is quite common in pop music to start off with, and it's going to go to a quaver, and then I'm going to put a crotchet afterwards. So it's a common pop drum, kick drum rhythm that you've heard millions of times probably, and the pattern just goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so that's the main fundamental pattern that we're going for. It's going to start on an E, it's going to have a G and a B in our E minor chord. So what I can do is I can use the hand grab tool, select all them notes, Control D it. I can then move it up to the A. Now notice when I did that, it's copied a minor chord and it's put it onto an A. Now in D major it wants to be an A major chord, so we're going to move the 3rd interval and move that up a semitone. Now if you wanted to stick doing the inversion thing, you could lower the E down onto the lower octave, so they've got that handshake pattern that we used in the same manner if you wanted to. I'm just going to not do that for this purpose to demonstrate the next thing. So just make sure that that C note is on C sharp, so that makes it into A major. I'm going to copy that across again, so select them notes and do Control D, duplicate it, and move it down to the root note of F sharp. So I'm just putting these in as you probably will be doing it. If you're confident though with a music theory knowledge, you don't necessarily have to do it the way I'm doing it, and you could just draw them in by hand if you wanted to. Now notice that it was an A major chord and I've copied it across, and I'm now into an F sharp minor chord, because F sharp minor has to have a flattened third, so obviously I need to lower that. And then for the last chord, if I duplicate that for the last time, I want to move it up to B, and it's going to be on B minor chord. So if I move the up arrow and change that lowest note to a B, which looks like it is, I then have a D and an F sharp, so it's perfect. So because the last chord that I copied was a minor chord, the intervals are going to be the same between the notes. I just have to find the root note that I want it to be. Again, this might not sound good as good as the intro part where there's inversions happening. So at that point there, you could make the decision and say, right, well that's an F sharp note. If I bring it down to the F sharp down here, you could rearrange the note values to create inversions for yourself. So they look and sound like they're in the same location, and you're not having like big jumps like this note up here. So that was the E at the top. If I drop that back down again now, it's just something that you can try to make it work better for yourself. So that's the chord progression, but using the same chord progression as the intro as well, by the way, but that's a chord progression we're going to use for the verse section, and it's going to give us more of a rhythm pattern for what we've been doing. So if I go into add the bass notes in and do exactly the same thing, I can go back to using the lower region E, so down at E2, and again if I hold that note out exactly the same way as I would do for the piano part, it could in theory give us the option to have a supporting bass line using the different rhythm this time. So if I duplicate that, nice and easy, go up to the A, duplicate that, go down to the F sharp, and duplicate that and go up to the B. And if I just bring the screen in, you should see all them 4 bars. So with the bass part, obviously it's not very exciting if the bass player is always going to be supporting the chord with playing the root note. So what we can look at doing is including some external notes, some outside of the scale notes to be able to make it a little bit more interesting sound-wise. So I'm going to zoom in for that. So if you have a look at the first note, it was an E going to an A. So at this point here, we could use any of the chord tones. So a note in the E minor chord going to A major would be a G. So that would be a good selection to go. It would be a solid selection because it's a note of the chord. So we'll get the draw tool, sorry, and draw that note in. That'll work effectively. We could also go higher than the note we're going to and go to B. So we could use that. And obviously we could use the same note. We could use the root note, but again, it might not offer too much harmony or additionality. So I'm going to just try the E because it's a nice passing note going up. Then we're on an A and we want to go down to an F sharp. So again, we could use the A, the C sharp, or the E. So I could use a lower pitched note. So I could draw this down here. So it's going to go A down to the 5th note up to the F sharp. So that's a possibility. I could also start to use scale tones as well. So I could actually say, right, well, the note passing from A to F sharp in a scale in the key of D is G, so I could use that as a descending note as well. So we don't have to just use the chord tones, the notes that are in the chords, the arpeggio notes if you like. We can use the scale notes to get through between chords. So I'm on an F sharp, I'm going to a B. At this point here, F sharp has an A in it, so not that note there, so that note there. If I put the A in, that'll be working nicely again. And then you've got to think, right, I'm on a B, but I'm going back to an E. So the option there could be an F sharp potentially, or it could be a G possibly. So we could try different patterns as you go through. So if we play from bar 9. Okay, so up to that point there, you've heard them passing notes that are played by themselves, obviously clearer without the drum kit being included at this point, but them passing notes can just add a little bit more harmony and texture to the song to be able to get you to the next chord, so lead the listener's ears if you like. So when we go to the drum aspects then, so if we start to add a pattern in for the drum kit on the first section. Just get it back to C1. Right, okay, so that's the kick drum pattern, and what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and support that same piano part. So we're going to have a kick on beat 1, a kick on beat 2, and a kick on beat 3. The standard for the pop idea is snare on 2 and 4, so that's going to be pretty straightforward. And then for the hats now, we could start to do 8th notes. So what you'll notice is we could just draw in 8 notes all the way across the top there, and that's going to be giving you like the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so this pattern here, very very common in a lot of pop and rock music. So if you can actually create this pattern and draw it in, it's going to be quite used very commonly. So you'll probably put it in a million times in your life. Right, so to make it a little bit more interesting, to add some difference in, what we can do is take that very first note and move it up to the C sharp as well. So instead of it just being hats all the way through, you have got a crash to indicate to the listener that something new is happening. And just to make it quick and easy, what we could then do is look at getting the grabber tool and selecting all of this section here and duplicating it. So if we copy it across to the next bar, what you might want to do is you could do it 3 more times and then just select this note separately, but to save a little bit of time and effort, just select that one note down now, bring it back in. So I'm just going to use the hats all the way through the next part, duplicate that once and twice, and then that's the 4 bars of music. So you can go back to putting this on clips as well, and as you go on to putting it all on clips rather than notes, you'll see that you've got the blue section now is potentially a verse. We're going to go to bar 9 and play it, and here it goes. Okay, and again, if this is the verse section in a pop song, what you might find is it might happen, say, 16 bars. So if we duplicate that 3 times on top of what it is, there's 16 bars now of our verse. So from the very beginning, we've got the slow part, and it builds up gradually, long held chords, same chord progression as the verse. Okay, and then it's building up. So if you wanted to add some variation to start, putting some transitions in between sections as well, you could potentially put like a snare hit as you go through, and then obviously if you're getting into the production skills that you'd be doing with Jamie, you could look at doing the velocities as well, so you could start building up the dynamics of the snare hits as well. That's me guessing that's the velocity set in right now, it looks like it, so there you go. So you could in theory make the first note a little bit quieter and build it up, so as you get through that part, then it's building into the part. Obviously I'm not interested so much about the velocity sense myself, it's just obviously about getting the rhythms and the harmonies in, but that's the extra stuff you can do afterwards. Right, okay, so let's get the last part done then. So obviously we've got the verses and the intros, now we want to do a chorus section, so we want to make it busy. Now again, looking at the possibilities, or thinking about the possibilities of the chord progression, if we're in the key of D major, we really want to start looking at incorporating that to give the listener the resolve, if you like. So what I'm going to try doing is actually make an upbeat rhythm pattern, so it's no longer just going to go bar, da, da, or long held notes like the 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put the driving rhythm that we did earlier on. I'm not saying that this has to happen, obviously you can do whatever you want, but it's just the theory and the elements that I'm looking for or trying to incorporate for this. So again, once you've done the 1 bar and you've drawn the 1 bar in, we can copy and paste it and make it quick for the next few bars. But this is just a D major chord, and it's going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay. So from listening to the 1 bar music, okay. So bar 25 there. Now, knowing that we've got the idea of the chorus section and they wanted to be upbeat and happy, then we could look at using the major chords in the scale there. So where's that duplicated to? Is it duplicated? Nope. Oh, there are 2 songs. I'm liking that for some reason. Come back. Anyway. Right, okay. So that. Don't know what's going on with the grabber tool or the copy and paste tool there, but out of curiosity, see what that does. They're giving me the wrong notes. Yeah, okay. Duplication there now. Right, okay, so I don't know what's gone on with the duplication tool in that circumstance there, but I went to go Control D or Command D for me, and it wasn't copying, so I did Control C, Control V, selected where I wanted it to go, and that pasted it. That could be information for us when we're going from verses later on, or trying to, copy the chorus section further up as well. Right, so trying to keep this upbeat and happy, what we're going to do is we're going to go from a D major chord to a G major chord. So we're using 2 majors, and it's keeping it, duplication's working again now. Upbeat and happy, going back down to the D again, and going to go up to A this time. So for the chorus chord progression, D, G, D, A, very common chord progression using the major chords, especially in a pop song, so you can use that. On the bass side of things then, we're going to utilise this rhythm pattern in a second. So what we could do is put this onto clips and select this part here, duplicate it, and we can bring it back up to the bass part. Obviously if we rename it bass, just so we know that it is obviously bass, not a piano. And then what we can look at doing is using some extra notes and rhythm patterns that we wouldn't have probably used before. So to start off, the job role of the bass player is to support the root note of the chord. So I'm going to keep that note in as the starting point. But then we could look at trying to use some notes of the scale. So I'm going to try going root note to third to root note to fifth. And again, to try and keep it poppy and simple and repetitive, I'm going to take these ideas out. Obviously I haven't heard this yet, so it might not sound fantastic, but we'll give it a shot. So using that note and the fifth on the end, so I can take out them two. So I'm just, as you can probably see here, I'm just copying the same pattern, making sure the root note's the same to start us off with, and then I'm using the third and the root note and the fifth, and then final one up here, then out, third, root note, and fifth. So there's the bass part so far. Now we could give it a quick listen, see what it sounds like. Okay, so I'm just going to double check that it's starting on the right part. Yeah, so okay. So we could then look and say, well, that's a little bit too dissonant, not dissonant I would say, but jittery. So you could, in theory, make it into a continual aspect, so we don't have any gaps. So the bass player could be constantly playing eighth notes through this, and literally just adding in the root notes, so it doesn't sound like it's too much of a jump. The other option is we don't do so many big jumps and put in, passing notes between each of the chords, which we'll try doing next. So let's give that a quick shot. Okay, so that does work. It's quite effective, but it just depends on what you're looking to do. And let's say with the passing notes, in theory, we could use a couple of passing notes going from this note, which is bar 25 here. So this is going to be E minor. So if I put sorry, we did different chord progression now, didn't we? So it's D. So an E note and an F sharp note would be nice if I can check that one note by itself, and that would go up there. And then we're on G, we're going back to D, so again you could do the descending option of what we've just put in there. And then this is D going to A this time, so we could go to E and we could go to F sharp, or we could now incorporate the G, and I've got 2 notes, so that will not work too well. And then obviously we're descending back from this down to D again, so we could put the F sharp and the E. And again, it's just using notes of the scale, obviously not trialing and erroring it until afterwards, so you sort of plot the notes in, and then let's have a listen. So that note there, if you listen to it as it goes round, slightly out of sync, because it should have been that note there, the F sharp, but it worked apart from that. And you could argue that it's a bit too busy for a pop song. And obviously that's your discretion. You make the call. I'm going to leave it for now because it's just a demo to show you how to put notes in, and you can obviously simplify it or keep it, whatever you want to do. Right, so again, trying to emphasize what's going to happen within the drum part. I'm going to try and use that fundamental rhythm that we've heard. And bring this down into the kick drum area. So I'm going to try and get the kick drum to play that same fundamental pattern and make sure we're on the right bar starting that. So kick, beat 1, beat 2. Sorry. Again, this is why it's important to zoom in, because you can't see, can you, from a distance. Okay, so let me just check grid setting on 8 notes. Okay, so I'm using that kick drum, and it's going to be beat 1 and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just sing this on a little bit more. 6, 7, 8. So there's your hi-hats across the top there. I'm going to try and force the kick drum to do the same fundamental pattern as the piano part was doing, and try and keep the snare on 2 and 4. So we've now got hats doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, so we can listen to that quickly, see what that sounds like. Okay, so that does work. However, what we could also do to make it sort of busier and to make it a bit more interesting, if you like, just be careful adding your notes on, is to searching for that note quickly that I've added. Make it into 16th notes, so I don't think it's gone in. So by doing that, you'd have to change your grid setting up here to 1 16th notes and bring that back in. And in theory, you could obviously do a group at a time if you wanted to. I'm just going to add these extras in. Now again, you could also look at putting in the crash symbol on the first beat of the bar. That's another option. You might discover it's a little bit too busy, possibly, for depending on the type of pop song you're looking for, or even the type of composition. Obviously this is just an introduction to using Pro Tools and being able to start putting some notes in. If you look at the idea of the styles of music you do in the hip hop idea, we will have a range of different patterns, and we'll do a couple of them tracks on the ideas of tracks later on. But there's our potential first bar. If we duplicate that, we can then look at bringing that crash symbol back down if we don't want to use that all the time. And we can copy that again twice. So hopefully within them 4 bars of music, we've got a new chord progression, new bass part, new drum pattern. Okay, so bass drum's not too clear on this, unfortunately, for you to be able to hear it, but hopefully when it's exported down you'll see it, and maybe get a chance to hear it on your own system as well. So then obviously looking at it in note values not helping, so let's put it onto clips. And then obviously noting that that last section there is also going to be our chorus section. We may want to look at changing it. So if you double click on a colour, like I think Alan told us to do, and change the colour on the clips and tracks, and there we go. We've got our chorus section, which we can then duplicate for 8 bars. So far you built up drums, bass and piano on an intro, on a verse section and on a chorus section, and as you start to build up the composition and putting extra parts in, this is where you could say, right, I'll go back to the verse section, get all down by copying and pasting, Control C, click it to here, Control V. Yeah, so that's the way of doing the sections, if you like. So Control C will copy the parts, Control V will paste them. Then obviously we'd want a mid-late section, if you like. So I'm just pasting this for a spacer right now. Obviously you'd want to check that these are lining up in the right beats and not overlapping as well, because it looks like it's slightly out of sync there from this visual here, but I'm just trying to demonstrate how you could start building up your composition. So noting that that's going to be your mid-late section, What you could do is completely delete the MIDI data in all of them so they're empty. You could also look at making it a different colour, just so you know that that's got to be changed later on. Let's put it purple for now maybe. Then after your middle 8 section in a pop song, potentially you'd want to go to 2 choruses. So what we could do is select the green section here, Control C that, bring it down here, and then you could even look at doing 3 or 4 choruses, and then you could look at putting some up as its key changes as well. So you could select the MIDI notes and move it up a tone, and that would give it some interest. And if you really wanted to at the end, you could use your outro, which might be your intro bit in reverse. So if you've done a build up, you might want to do a decay. You can probably see that the clips are probably overlapping as you go through. You'd spend a bit more time zooming in and zooming out and lining them up, make sure they're perfect. But that's sort of, from a simple 3 section piece there, how you could eventually get to a 3.5 minute long song, or however long it is at this point in time. It'll tell us. I can't see time, but you'll be able to change one of these to a time, no doubt. Or down here, look, 3 minutes. 3 minutes and 6 seconds so far. So again, you know, tempo change might make it longer, or adding an extra couple of bars in here or there, putting in a pre-chorus or whatever, that would extend it to 3.5 minutes. Right, I know it's a quick and long-winded process in a sort of same manner. Hopefully it's a good recap and it makes sense this time, and you should be able to hear me. If there's any problem, just let me know.